with Rajya Sabha TV. Our special analysis of this Union Budget 2015-16 continues, and 16-17. And in that sense, what we're talking about right now for the next half hour is about the energy and environment. And as far as allocations for that are concerned, the expectations, of course, were huge. And we'll be joined by none other than Minister of State for Environment, Mr. Prakash Javadekar. Thank you very much for coming in, Mr. Javadekar, and taking our questions over here on Rajya Sabha TV. Also joining me on the panel are Priyavrat Bharti. He's the Program Director of Industry and Environment at the Centre for Science and Environment, and Mr. Himanshu Vats, Senior Editor of the Economic Times. So, Minister, we'll come to you first. As far as expectations, I mean, you came out of Parliament and said that this was a transformational budget. But in terms of the wish list for your ministry, does the budget satisfy all those wishes?
Yeah, let me tell you, our ministry's revenue stream is not only budget. Now this time I have put before Parliament Campa bill, and the standing committee has given the report. So the money which was actually nearly 3,000 to 4,000 crore per year, which was meant for afforestation, was put in banks only because of a peculiar situation. And last 10 years, the now accumulated money is 40,000 crores. We are giving that to the state. It's a big promise of us to the world that we will create new carbon sink. The money of 40,000 crore rupees will be there. So budget has that factor also. That is out of budget, but that is also to be actually incurred. Second, this is a regulatory ministry, but 5 crore poor people being given LPG is a big environmental service, big health service, and really it saves forest, and therefore that is also environment money. We have taxed coal from 200 per ton to 400 per ton. This is a huge thing, and therefore environment you will find mentioned in various departments, because action part is through departments of various ministries. The composting of urban waste done by RWAs and others need to have the market link that was missing. That market link is provided. So there will be major boost for converting urban waste into composting in a decentralized way. And that's the best way to do it. And that market link, that budget will come from chemical fertilizer. So various ministries, every ministry has some part of environmental consideration and budget provision for that. So all put together, the government's environment plan is a very robust plan, and that is very important.
All right, I'd also like to introduce another panelist. Mr. C.M. Vasudev joins us. He's a former finance secretary in the government of India. Thank you very much for coming in, Mr. Vasudev. But Himanshu Vats, I'll come to you. This budget comes 3 months after COP21. The minister was there. India was hailed as one of the major leaders of the deal that was clinched at COP21. But in terms of what we saw today, are we headed in the direction of achieving those goals that we've set out for ourselves?
There's certainly a very definite step in that direction. The coal cess is a very important development, doubling it at one shot. This is despite a lot of criticism. The steel companies, for example, have said this is bad. One of the things it does is it narrows the gap between renewable energy, say a solar energy project, and a thermal project. So to that extent, it is, it is quite a green initiative. Yes, one would have, expected more steps in that direction, but as the minister also said, it need not necessarily be in the budget. For example, there's a lot of controversy over age of vehicles, the kind of emissions. Now, Bharat Stage 6 and all have been announced. So at some stage, we would look forward to a comprehensive overall policy, but perhaps budget is not the place for it. Maybe the minister would be able to tell us.
All right, so, Mr. Minister, we'll come to you, but I want to get in Priyavrat also, because as the agency who's really the watchdog for this particular aspect, the environment and energy security, what do you make as far as the announcement today are concerned?
So, as an environmentalist, I think overall, I find this budget to be reasonably progressive. The first thing which the minister talked about, the cess, which being increased from rupees 200 per ton to 400 rupees per ton. I think it will not have a material impact on the electricity tariff. I expect it to have an impact of 15-20 paise. So that's something which you can absorb. And my estimate is that over the next 1 year, this cess would result in a total revenue of around 25,000 crores plus. So that can be used for pollution abatement technologies, that can be used for renewable energy. So essentially that has been the goal of the Clean Energy Fund. Now, the challenge is that the last few years, the government has collected around 30,000 crores through this coal cess fund. And till I think early last year, March, April 2015, not much had been disbursed. And there's been some progress. So to that extent, I would like to see more clarity where the money goes. Second positive aspect, which has not come about right now, is the tax, infra tax on both diesel vehicles as well as small cars, ranging between 1% and 2.5%. So that enshrines basically the polluter pays principle to begin with. Secondly, it will impact to a certain extent the diesel vehicles, which are extremely polluting. So to that extent, the polluter pay principle will be enshrined. So all those things I also find positive. And finally, the LPG subsidy, or for that matter, the connections which will be given to the people who are below the poverty line. So we're talking about 1.5 crore families getting connection the next year, and then it will go up to 5 crores. So that's a positive because it will be offset. The subsidy will be offset by current subsidies which are given to the somewhat relatively richer communities or richer families. So to that extent, I find a few things to cheer about in this budget proposal.
All right, a few things to cheer about. But Mr. Vasudev, coming across to you, and this budget was really a green budget because budget copies weren't given out to the media this time around. They were available online. So in terms of going green, that was one initiative, Mr. Javadekar, that I think you need to be congratulated on. But Mr. Vasudev, what do you make of it in terms of securing our energy requirements? I mean, the targets that have been set for energy are quite huge. I mean, 175 gigawatts of renewable energy by 2022. Are we on track?
Yeah, I think the budget does not elaborate that much on the energy aspects, but I think reading between the lines, I think you can make out, and also the schemes which have been launched for the energy sector to provide self-sufficiency in energy, especially the coal sector has done exceptionally well. Coal production has gone up. Most of the thermal power stations are not short of coal. So the budget does talk about other renewable sources of energy. It also talks about a medium-term plan for the nuclear energy. And there is some cess on the coal cess, which you were just discussing. But I think the current cess of 200 rupees, which is there, perhaps the minister could have explained what has been done with the money that has already been collected. I think there is a feeling, I'm not very much sure on that, but I was told by some people that there is a lot of sort of money which was collected in the cess imposed in the previous years, which has not yet been fully utilized. So collecting cess, collecting revenues is fine, but I think it would have been better and more helpful if he had also spelt out how these cess proceeds are going to be used.
All right, let's put that question to the minister itself. Mr. Javadekar, how will the cess allocations or the money that's being generated from this particular cess, how will they be used? Explain that for our viewers, because the budget did not delve into much detail on that aspect.
Earlier, the concept of using the cess was only about clean technology and particularly only connecting or evacuation of power, particularly solar and others. But besides evacuation, now we have already started using the money for various renewable and various clean technologies, development and usage. And therefore, now last 1 year, the offtake from the fund is good, and we have given details with the budget annexures, and we will be giving every year the balance sheet of that says how it is, how much is collected and how much and where it is used. So it's all about, the concept now is clean fund, which will be used for clean technology, means new technologies to be developed, the earlier technologies to be used, widespread use of it, so subsidizing that, and the renewable subsidies also, some kind of subsidies are all will be paid through this, and evacuation and particularly these transmission issues, these are also to be dealt, because ultimately you will have to store the solar power also. So that also, all that is now well defined, codified, and so we'll be using it for that.
All right, I'd like to throw this panel open for questions to the Minister. Yeah, Priya, go ahead.
So I have a question for the Minister. Basically, in December, the Ministry of Environment and Forest had released a new set of regulations to control pollution in the power plants, coal-based power plants. So these new standards would imply, they are pretty progressive standards in line with global standards. And what is necessary is that the power plants will have to put in sufficient amount of investments to control this pollution. And my question to the Minister is that, given, and my estimate is close to 100,000 crores would be needed over the next few years to control to put FGDs in place, to control sulfur dioxide, nitrogen dioxide, etc. So I don't see a clear plan for this coal cess to be used to control pollution in power plants. It's only on renewables. And given that our reliance on coal will remain for the next 20 years, we'll still rely on 60% of energy from coal. I would have liked and expected some of this coal cess to go back to the coal-based power plants to improve the pollution.
Mr. Javadekar.
Absolutely. And I agree absolutely, because coal washing we are making mandatory. So it will be clean coal, and then the supercritical technology and all processes. The way you are treating water, using water, the way you are using fly ash and transporting coal is all important. And all these aspects and are needed to be taken care of when you want to control pollution. So we have fixed the standards which are absolutely world class. But that is our high aim is, low aim is crime. So we have put the good aim, and there will be a time frame. For new units, they will have to start with new things. The existing units, you need to transit, because 2 days ago I was in Krishnapatnam. There are new 20,000 megawatt projects are coming, 15,000 megawatt only in Nellore district around Krishnapatnam port. They were asking me, if you are going to implement these standards, we'll have to change so much. I said, you will have to plan for a change, and the feasible plan we will work out, and that is what we will give you time for. But everybody has to migrate to that system, and with a feasible time frame, because that is the way we should go.
All right, any further questions?
Yeah, I have a question. See, India's basic energy requirement is still met by coal. That is the major source of energy. So I think from the industry's perspective, industry would like to know what is India's long-term policy. Will coal cess increase further? Will other discouraging measures come so that they can invest accordingly? And related issue, how does the minister think the government would balance this requirement of energy as the base load, as coal as the base load, a very important source of energy, and once industrial growth picks up,
right,
coal will become more and more important. So balancing that with the green concerns, are we to see many more steps in that direction, or is he satisfied with where we are?
Yeah, let me demystify coal debate. One is that in absolute terms, the coal consumption of USA is today nearly double that of India today has, even after having so much of shale gas. China is 4 times than what we are using, and therefore in absolute terms also we are much less, and in per capita terms we are much less. But we are not taking refuge into arguments and scoring points. We are going clean ways. We are going much cleaner way at our development stage, when the developed countries today were at that our stage, they were much dirtier, but we are today much cleaner. So that is the path we have chosen as a commitment. And because of technology availability, But I am very sure that sooner there will be new carbon capture and use technology which will become feasible, because I believe in constant innovations. I believe in newer technologies coming in, and then they become feasible also, because even changeover of technology becomes 3 or 4 years payback, then all business people accept it. There is a classic example of distilleries. When we asked them to be zero liquid discharge, all protested. But once they started, now after 1.5 years, everybody has accepted. And they are happy because they realize that it's a payback time of 4 years.
All right, so there are many resistance. I mean, there is often resistance to new policies, and once implemented, it all falls into place. Mr. Vasudev, go ahead. You also had a question for the minister.
Yeah, I have a question on the environment sector, a little unrelated to energy as such.
Please.
My point is that the finance minister is very rightly focused on rural development, and one of the important sort of capital investment areas that he has highlighted is for irrigation. And a lot of stalled irrigation projects, semi-finished, unfinished projects. Now, the problem from my experience in this sector is that even though 40-45% of our arable area is irrigated, and the attempt is to increase that 45%, but because of the seasonality of the rainfall in India, in the lean season, even our current irrigation system, canal system, are not able to get enough water, and therefore they are not being fully utilized. But in the rainy season, there's plenty of water all around, and the need for any canal irrigation type of system is not there. So unless there is some program or project for storing water of the monsoon season and then using it for irrigation and through the canal systems, but there are a lot of environmental sort of lobbies which are opposed to large mega projects for storage, because I feel without storage you cannot augment the availability of water, and unless augmentation of water is there, the canal irrigation systems which will be developed through this investment may remain unutilized. What is the environmental ministry's view with regard to storage of water in large projects?
We are in favor of this storage concept, because if one valley has a flood water and other valley nearby doesn't have that flood water, and you store and use in both valleys, that is the right approach. And we must, because we are 17% of world's population. We are 17% of cattle population as well. And both require water, food and land. And we have only 2.5% of land and only 4% of fresh rainwater resources. So we must use water very effectively for the use, and therefore interlinking of rivers, then using this flood cum storage technology and all other such technologies, so that water doesn't go in Krishna Godavari basin, 3,000 CFT water goes to, TMC water goes to confluence and sea. We can use it before, and it will be good irrigation. They have started one link. These are the ways. Ken Betwa also. Some things will come, and yes, there will be opposition by some lobbies, but we have to say very clearly in the national interest that without damaging environment to a great extent, and because I believe that irrigation finally brings up greenery, irrigation brings up new vegetation and forest also.
Right.
So things get developed. It is not a lose-lose situation. It can be made win-win situation.
Okay, Priyavat, what's your view on this? Because there are people who say that this is not good for the environment, but the minister is saying no. I mean, there's a compromise sometimes that has to be made.
If I could address another question basically I had on renewable side.
Okay.
Basically, the government had previously announced an 80% depreciation to push the renewable investment. And in the current budget proposal, it has been reduced from 80% to 40%. Now, given that we have such ambitious targets for renewables, 175 gigawatt of total, 100 gigawatt solar, I couldn't quite understand why would we do that and simultaneously, of course, expect the investments to increase.
Mr. Javadekar?
Yeah, no, I think people are doing various experiments, and we started on the road of solar energy at 19 rupees per unit, and now it is 4 rupees 36 paisa. Last week Piyush Goyal and me both saw the Kochi airport, and today the average size for 1 megawatt solar power is 5 acres required. But in Kochi we saw that it has been done by Bosch with 3.5 acres only, 1 megawatt. So you will require less land, you will have always new technologies, new fittings available, and you can do it more efficiently. So solar also becomes a feasible and a good payback time. So people are accepting more and more and will use all the space available. We are the solar rich country, and we are networking all the solar rich countries in New Solar Alliance.
All right, Mr. Minister, I'd like to thank you very much for coming in and taking questions from our experts over here and helping us understand and decipher the budget and especially the environment and the energy component of that a little better. Thank you very much for that. We just have about 5 minutes, so I'll give you gentlemen closing comments. Yep. And Himanshu, I'll start with you. In terms of, I mean, as we talked about before this budget, we had a whole session where you said this could be the green budget, given the fact that the government has been hailed as Mr. Modi has been hailed as a solar hero, and such other things have been attributed to him. So does the government come through on its commitment to a cleaner, better, more energy efficient India?
To quite an extent, yes. I would have expected a little more. But, you know, there are certain things, may I respond to the point he raised, you know, reducing this depreciation. I think if you're going for such a huge expansion of green energy, you cannot be pegging that program on subsidies. You know, as prices are coming down, you know, when you're talking of 100,000 megawatts, that kind of expansion, your basic premise on that should not be the subsidy. And one of the things that this tax subsidy does is it attracts people who are not really interested in green power. They just want to take some depreciation benefit and go away. Some of the more serious companies are ones who are already at a limit of tax exemptions, and they are not setting it up for depreciation reasons. So I don't think it's a very bad idea to let those kind of powers come up, plants come up.
I, in fact, agree with Mr. Himanshu on this issue that subsidies is not the solution. But on the other hand, what I'm still struggling to figure out is an INDC targets are 30 to 35% reduction in GDP intensity, energy intensity of GDP. We're talking about 100,000 megawatt of solar. We've got 5,000 megawatt of solar right now. Best case, we're talking about another 10,000 megawatt another couple of years. So there is no path. So for the near term, yes, there is, the budget looks good, but I'm not seeing the path for the next 5-7 years. How do you get to renewables of that size? And maybe you need a much bigger in R&D in renewables. You need to rethink the entire thing, but it's not clear how we're going to get there.
Yeah, and that is a problem that Mr. Vasudev has been highlighted with various other things also, including the fact that farm incomes would be doubled, and that would require the agriculture sector to grow by almost 14%. So in terms of targets, these are really high targets that the government is setting for itself, isn't it?
No, I think, yeah, the targets are very high, but I think it's politically very correct and even economically a very correct approach, because we have a situation in our country where agriculture contributes only 14% to the GDP, but 60% of the people are dependent on agriculture. So there is a need to improve the productivity and the earnings through the agriculture sector, and also to create more and more non-farm type of activities in rural areas, so that the people who are currently unemployed or disguisedly employed in agriculture get other revenues. So there are a number of schemes of that type, and I think so much investment in the rural areas is going to create a lot of demand, consumption. It will provide a good spur to the manufacturing sector also. And so far as the energy sector is concerned, I feel that the environment issues, this budget of course cannot address the environmental issues and the government's policy in that area in totality, but you can see hints here and there on how they are also mindful of the environmental issues. For example, the cess that you already discussed on the coal, which will be used for clean energy. Then this universal sort of coverage of cooking gas is a very environment-friendly measure. and also the increase in the excise duties on the diesel cars. I think that also is an environment-friendly measure. So there are multiple measures, but I agree, holistically, what is the government's policy with regard to the environmental issues, with regard to green energy and all that? Perhaps budget is not the right place to find that in a totality. But it is very clear that the finance minister, while framing the budget proposals, has been mindful of the need to take action in these areas.
All right, so the future then becomes really critical, and how the government implements these particular programs and the targets that it set out for itself. We promise here on Rajya Sabha TV that we'll continue to discuss this. Himanshu Vats, Priyawrat Bhati and CM Vasudev, thank you very much for coming in, and also Mr. Prakash Javadekar, thank you very much for coming in and helping us understand and decipher the energy and the environment component of this budget a little better. That's it in our special presentation on the union budget this time around. But of course, we here at Rajya Sabha TV will continue to discuss these issues even in more detail in the days to come. Thanks so much for watching.